we're talking about a much more serious issue, which has to do with people dying day in and day out. 232 deaths have been recorded so far from the month of January. We've not even got the figures for February yet. Major accidents happening in this month as well. 1,237 people have been injured in road crashes in the past month alone. Now, this is data from the MTTD itself, which is confirming this. Of course, it's a slight decrease from what we saw in 2021, but it also paints a very grim picture of where we are as a country, the spate of road accidents. We have a total of 972 vehicles involved in these accidents, and it is indeed worry. Just to give you a better picture as we have our guests veer into the conversation, 461 motorcycle-related crashes have been documented, and these are the ones that we know of. Again, reminiscent of last year, where a lot of these were actually motorcycle-related, and 93 lives lost through that specific one, that is motorcycle incidents. In the Ashanti region, it is in the lead again, with 44 people killed and or dead and 308 injured, followed by the Greater Accra region with 31 deaths and 186 injuries. I ask you because in Parliament you are contemplating discoursing on this matter, opening a national conversation and calling for the heads, as some have said, of the NRSA leadership, the MTTD leadership, the DVLA leadership. Collins, how do you feel about the general spate of accidents and this call by Parliament?
Well, listening to you even right now with the statistics is quite scary. And I can tell you that even the figures you are pointing out, these are just the official ones. I believe very strongly that there are some deaths that have not been even recorded. It can even be more. And it's very, very scary. I'm happy when it comes to issues of death. I'm sure my brother and I will agree that the call for a bipartisan conversation about it is in the right direction. I travel on the road to my constituency almost all the time. As I speak to you, I'm on the road to my constituency. And I was happy when I got to the Nsawam stretch all the way to Apega. The drug carriage has been completed. I was really, really excited. And whilst on the road, I kept asking myself, after the dualization, has there been any accident? And speaking to a few people, it seems that since that was done, they've not seen any accident. What it tells me is that if government is able to dualize most of the major roads, we are going to reduce this accident to the barest minimum. Again, to individual attitudes. I drive on the road, and sometimes the kind of speed that people just drive on, it's scary sometimes. And most of the accidents that you see are human cost. We cause it ourselves. I've watched a documentary by your own colleague, Doyleton. He interviewed one gentleman who is now in the prison, who confessed that if he had waited for just 30 seconds, this accident would have happened. Wrong overtakings and all that. It's very, very scary. And I think it's important, the call for people to be made to account. I mean, people have been put in positions to ensure that these things don't go on. If it continues, I am in full support of insisting that the people in charge are brought to book. It's scary, the numbers you are talking about. These are human resources just going waste. Just this year, students were on their way to school when school reopened. Had an accident with one of the youth on bus. That was scary. I mean, you see the pictures and you just cannot even watch. And so it's a very beautiful conversation. I'm happy both sides of the political divide on this issue are parallel. We are speaking the same language on this particular issue. All we are saying is that the MPTD and all those in charge of our road network, the transport minister, the road minister, government has a road. Of course, we all know the challenges we are having with our finances, but it would have been nice to see all the major roads dualized. You know, when you are driving and you are not meeting a car, it's easier to drive than the single lane when you are meeting each other. The collision alone can cause a very, very dangerous havoc. So, my brother, I am all for a bipartisan conversation about it, and I'm hoping that at the end of the day, we can come together and bring solutions that will, the next time we are speaking on this matter, this kind of statistics will not be an issue at all.
Minority Leader Haruna Idrisu has been calling for the NRSA board to give some account to the people, and that has been re-echoed by others. The first Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Joe Osei-Wusu, has blamed drivers for causing the road accidents. I saw this poster recently, which spoke about the fact that it has a bus in there, and it says, it's a machine. It does not think. You have to think for it. And that is what I guess all of us ought to be doing. But on the back of this call by the first Deputy Speaker of Parliament, you would also note that quite a number of times we cite people in officialdom, the legislators, speeding here and there. And you are not just speeding, you are also overtaking a lot. I mean, we've had campaigns where we spotted some of you even getting arrested and all of that. Are you also willing to take responsibility that you're part of the problem and to address it on the floor of Parliament?
Well, personally, anybody who knows me knows that I don't drive that top speed. I don't do that. I don't want to sound as a hypocrite. Sometimes, in the heat of the moment, you are late to somewhere. You can do one of the, so I can take a responsibility. I mean, as a people, as Parliament, we should be, because there have been videos of members of Parliament caught on camera over speeding and not adhering to road regulations. So I don't want to be speaking and say, oh no, I have not done anything. I think it's a collective responsibility as members of Parliament, and I can pledge my support to this call, that we all come together to ensure that road signs, road regulations are adhered to. I can pledge my support. I'm sure, let's say, I don't have a problem at all accepting, going for it, ensuring that the right things are done.
Stay with us, Collins. Do stay with us. Murtala, for you, this call, I mean, the NRSA, the DVLA, the MTTD, and I feel it is important at this point because we seem to be following the same trajectory. In fact, December last year was horrific in terms of the figures that were put forward. And again, these are even the official figures. Who knows about the ones that were not even recorded? This call to Parliament, are you sure it will result in anything?
Well, let me state that when we mention the figures, we need to understand the history behind those figures. We need to understand the real stories behind the figures we mentioned.
Right.
We are so horrified that we are talking about over 1,000 lives lost. But for me, the story behind that over 1,000 lives are that several women will become widows. Several kids will become orphans. The education of several kids will be truncated. It comes with huge burden. Okay,
so just to clarify, the over 1,000, at least if you're referring to the statistics, that has to do with injuries. The 1,237 injuries, but those dead, 232.
Exactly, the 232. Right. In fact, so if you take even the over 1,000 injuries, some education will be truncated. If the father was the one struggling, or the mother was the one struggling, just to find some food on the table, to find money to pay school fees, some of these injuries could be life. Some could be minor. Some could be injuries that would incapacitate the parent from engaging in anything. Or for all you know, a young person who takes care of his old or her old mother or old parents, the person, as a result of the accident, is incapacitated. Right. He or she can no longer do the work for which reason he could put food on the table.
Not to talk of even the economic impact and the impact on our health system.
Exactly. Right. So, and you find this over 200 lives that are lost. People's husbands have died. People's wives have gone. People's parents have gone. The breadwinners of entire families have gone. So for me, that is the real story behind these numbers. And the reasons why we have this, one is the nature of our roads. That's a factor. Two, the nature of driving. Three, the types of drivers we have, and for the conditions that drivers are whenever they are driving. Majority of the accidents we have had, and for which reason several lives are lost, are traceable to commercial vehicles. Because, may God forbid, if one person drives your vehicle and you have an accident and anything happens, it is just you. But when you have a U-turn bus that has over 27, 30 people or sometimes 40 people in that bus, an accident occurred and lives are going to be lost, you're going to have a lot of people losing their lives. What kind of training are we given to these drivers? What has been the position of the driver unions? Is it just about agitations anytime at all there are going to be hikes in fuel prices? Or it is just about agitation with the Ghanaian populace anytime they intend to increase prices? Do they have refresher training that they have for their people? Because, you see, these are unions. So it's an identified group. Members of the groups can easily be identified. They have stations that they operate. Can we factor into the road safety campaign we have as a state and the resources we have compulsory training for those people who are engaged in having this driving? How many of them have been engaged in drunk driving? Look, you go to some of these stations, the drivers can tell you this particular driver, he cannot drive without taking alcohol. And you know that.
Right.
And sometimes our attitude, those of us who also sit in these vehicles, you enter a bus, the bus is not speeding. You find people who will be shouting at the driver to speed because they think that they must get to where they want to get as quickly as possible. So it's a collective responsibility. Now the state has huge responsibility. Vehicles are spoiled on the roads. And you can find these vehicles being there sometimes for weeks, for days. Major roads, you have vehicles.
We've had accidents. I remember this trailer sort of truck that got stuck somewhere. It had a fault, and other drivers, I think a motorbike as well, came and piled into it. I think it was carrying onions or something of the sort.
And sometimes
and lives are lost.
Sometimes when these accidents happen, what we see is leaves.
In fact, that reminds me, just a few days ago, at least, they had hoisted the triangle on the upper part of the long truck. But if you weren't careful, I was coming at night. If you weren't careful, you could easily run into it, depending on your speed.
So why is it that even those with the triangles, they don't even have the basic knowledge as to where they place the triangles?
Right.
But majority of them don't even have the triangles. What they do, you have an accident at a corner, they have leaves. They can sprinkle the leaves about 100 meters sometimes.
That is what these people
now,
do.
In the night, how do you identify a leaf when you are driving? So that's why I think that the police, MTTU, have a huge responsibility. If they can mount a search, demand that every commercial vehicles at the stations, and the leaders of the unions, that if you don't have those triangles in your vehicle, you are not allowed to use the vehicle, particularly on a commercial journey where lives of people matter.
Let me bring in Collins here. Collins, you would also notice that, you look at some of our trotros, the buses, and even some of the taxis and others, and private vehicles as well. You take one look at them and you wonder about their roadworthiness. They are rust buckets. You could easily contract tetanus or something if you sat in those trotros. They are death traps, and all of them are insured. Some of them don't even have headlights, tail lights, functional, yet they go through the system. They are roadworthy, so to speak, and they are insured. From the end of Parliament, what more do you think we should be doing to ensure that maybe there's more compliance from, say, the DVLA? Is Collins with us?
Hello.
Yes, Collins. Did you hear what I ran by you?
I heard you. I heard you very clearly.
Right.
And that is why I support the call for heads to roll. People who have been put in the position of authority to ensure that these things, the compliance level for Parliament, the laws have been passed. We as members of Parliament have passed the laws. And I can tell you there are enough laws in this country that seek to regulate the kind of cars that should be on our roads and the kind of speed limit that has to be done. The Parliament on our side have done the law. It is now the duty of people who have been placed in authority to oversee the implementations of the law. That is why I support the call for leaders or people who have been placed in this kind of authority to be brought to book to be questioned. You go to DVLA and sometimes you see some of the cars that are that have roadworthiness, and you wonder whether indeed the cars were brought really to the station for an inspection. You wonder. And I agree with you perfectly. I've seen a lot of these cars on our roads, so dangerous. People drive, and the kind of fumes that come out of their cars, you can't even breathe. So I am with you totally. All we have to do is to ensure and insist that those who have been put in authority to ensure compliance do so. The best we can do as members of parliament at this moment, for the appropriate committee or for any member to call for any of the leaders or the people put in authority to come to parliament to brief us, as the minority leader has suggested. And a committee is clothed with the power to do so, for people in authority to come and account for their stewardship. To account for their stewardship. That is the only way Parliament now can come in. The laws have already been passed. It's left with the implementation. We have a duty to ensure that those in power do what is expected of them. If not, the Parliament has the authority and power to drag them to Parliament for questions. And I think we can do that.
And beyond questioning, I mean, would you call, for example, for those who are not able to clarify why exactly these things are happening? I mean, elsewhere, if you're a leader and you fail to do what you're put there to do, go to Japan, go to some of the countries in let me not even cite the West, in Asia, you fail to do what you ought to, you are axed, you are removed. Should we be going that way, maybe to hold the feet of these people to the fire?
If you have been put there, you are being paid by the state to ensure that something is done and you're not doing it. I don't have any problem if the appointing authority takes a decision to replace you. I don't have any problem with that at all.
Okay.
I support fully. I don't have any problem with that at all.
Let me come into the studio. Hold for us, Collins. So on the bit of moving this conversation forward, you have all the laws, you have all the legislation in terms of our roads and what ought to be done and what ought not to be done and all that. We budget for everything, but it appears when it comes to road safety, sometimes we don't expend so much in that direction. The National Road Safety Authority, even now that it's an authority, would also talk to you about logistical issues every now and then. What more do you think we should be doing to safeguard people's lives? For example, road safety, how much is it in the face of ordinary Ghanaians? As an entity here, we do our own bit, drive safe and this and that. There's even a show that I host myself, a segment that I do. But beyond that, let's say the NCCE, are we resourcing them enough to do more when it comes to road safety? In the last 2 years, the horrid experiences we've had. Do you get where I'm going? What more can we do in that respect?
Well, Albert Einstein once said that the significant problems that confront us can never be solved with the thinking we had when we created them. The problems we have are problems that we have created ourselves. Let us not get, be deluded into thinking that it is just God-sent problem on us. The vehicles are driven by us. The rules are constructed by us. The laws to prevent happenings of such are made by us, by Parliament. The challenge, as my brother said, is the enforcement of the laws. Someone is paid to ensure that the laws are enforced. Do you know, under our laws, it is even illegal to drive a car without the necessary tools or instruments in that car? How many vehicles have the police stopped without those vehicles having even reflectors, fire extinguishers? How many vehicles? Yet when the police unfortunately stop such, they are not interested in finding out whether you have these basic facilities in your car. What they are interested in is how much you give them. And observed, those who use these commercial vehicles, and my brother retreated same, you find them without common reflectors. Common reflectors they don't have. So in the night, you are driving behind a vehicle, you don't even know whether that's a vehicle you are driving behind or a motorbike. In fact, there are instances you driving an incoming vehicle has one light. And that one light, you expect that it is only a motorbike that should have one light.
It happens to be a lot of the time.
You will hit that vehicle. And these things happen. Unfortunately, you find these vehicles that will drive past police checkpoints. So what kind of education is given to these police officers? The political will for me is very important. The road safety campaign, and let me commend multimedia for an outstanding work you guys are doing. And I think that other media houses could join, because that is a bit, and that is how far you guys can go. I've had some chats with the NCC woman. I was at a sister, TV station, and after our program, she came. I had a few minutes engagement with her. In Legon, I happen to have been one of the people who founded the Civic Education Club on campus. And I remember at that time, Mr. Larabimi of blessed memory. And there is one man there who is still there, I think that Mr. Kwamwa. When we formed the Civic Education Club, what we were doing was to engage university students. And anytime we had resource persons who would come and take us through our basic rights and responsibilities. And there can't be anybody that can complement the work of the things you guys are doing and the road safety campaign in general than the Civic Education Club. Right. The NCCE. We have NCCE offices across the country, across the district. Go to the district offices. They are even non-existent. You go to a district office, they don't even have a desk. Some of them, they are operating the midship structures. They operate under the mercy of the district assembly. I think that we need to get our priorities right. Because you see, if you quantify the number of lives that are lost each year as a result of road accident, quantify the productivity of those people who have lost their lives or who are injured as a result of these road accidents, you can imagine how much the state is losing. So we need to look at the budgetary, allocation for this road safety work. We need to find out. The DVLA, we know that there have been a lot of improvement. And let me just admit now, they give you a card and I went to register a car. However, what percentage of their money that they generate as a result of the services they provide that are channeled to ensuring that we have these campaigns that people will get, to ensure that we reduce the number of accidents and carnage we have on our roads. Traditional authorities also have a duty. The traditional authorities in their traditional areas, they have a duty. The imams, the pastors, in the mosques and in the churches, unfortunately, our religious groupings, we only preach prosperity. We don't preach things that would ensure that we have a life that is existing, for which reason we can be looking for those prosperity.
Murtala, hold it right there for me. So I'm going to do this. Collins, in about 30 seconds, I'll come to you for your thoughts on our economy, where we find ourselves, and the bit about the Yentia demonstration today. I would just like you to give your take on that. But right before that, let me just acknowledge some of the messages coming through. This one says, Nana Sapompoku. And so what if there was a cake in the design of an e-levy? Is an e-levy poison? If some Ghanaians don't have a sense of humor, it is up to them. This one says, Christina says, of all the things in this world, you have nothing than to design the cake in an e-levy shape. This one says, if Honorable Collins claims the majority leader had no idea about the e-levy cake, why was he seen in a picture about to cut the cake, allegedly? Then these ones. This is addressed to you, Murtala. So for the V8, you also accepted it, and I can't read some of what you say, in these times of hardship. Why didn't you stand against that one? That is addressed to you. And maybe this final one from Samuel Sintim, who says, all Ghanaian drivers should be mandated to take defensive driving courses. In the US, you have higher insurance premiums without defensive driving courses. Maybe that could be the way to go. But coming back...